The great writer Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." It's a wise saying and one that we would do well to heed. It can be, and I think she meant it largely as, a word of warning. We are often too eager to dismiss warning signs as outliers, to write off bad behavior and hurtful words. We Christians are people of forgiveness, yes, but this is about something different. How we people, Christian or not, are often hesitant to acknowledge that something hurtful has happened at all, which is a necessary condition for forgiveness. You can't forgive something if you're pretending it hasn't happened, right? We're hesitant to acknowledge it until the harm has progressed, from minor to nearly irreparable. We don't like to rock the boat. We don't like to pick a fight. We don't like to make a scene. And so too often we shy away from recognizing all kinds of hurtful and harmful behavior. A mean-spirited remark, a joke with racist undertones, we ignore yellow flags or warning signs, we're hesitant to jump to conclusions. We extend the benefit of the doubt. I cannot tell you how many times my therapist has had to look me dead in the face and say, "Emily, the reason you feel weird about that interaction is the person was being a jerk. You're not too thin-skinned, you didn't handle it wrong, you didn't, do something to cause it, they just were being a jerk." And I'll say, "Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way." Or, "I don't know, I don't think he meant it like that." Or, "Well, I had asked her to be honest." And often my therapist has to really push to get me to accept that I wasn't misreading cues or being too thin-skinned. I am a professional extender of the benefit of the doubt, so I need to hear Maya Angelou's words as much as anyone. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When someone shows you that they have a mean streak, believe them. When someone shows you they are unreliable, believe them. When someone shows you that they do not care about you, believe them. When someone shows you that they're a bully, believe them. I wrote these words before anything that happened in the news this week, by the way. But those words took on a different and more hope-filled meaning as I encountered the gospel text this week. Jesus and his disciples have been making their way through the small towns and villages of the Galilee, teaching and healing and doing miracles. The crowds that follow him and gather around him have been getting bigger and bigger, and the sense of impending threat has been growing as religious authorities come from Jerusalem to try to understand what might be happening with this charismatic itinerant preacher. Shortly before today's reading, an exchange takes place between Jesus and Peter where Jesus asks, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter declares that Jesus is the Son of God. After that exchange, Jesus starts to prepare the disciples for what is to come. They will go to Jerusalem, and there Jesus will suffer and die. He tells them that anyone who wishes to be a disciple must take up their cross and follow. These are hard and frightening words. And although Jesus speaks to them of the resurrection, his words of promise were likely lost amidst the warnings of suffering, conflict, strife, and death. 8 days later, Jesus takes just a few of his closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, up a mountain to pray. At the top of the mountain, he is transfigured. His clothes become dazzlingly bright. His physical form reflects the glory and mystery of who he really is, the Son of God, the Holy One, the Messiah. With him appear two of the great prophets of Israel, Moses and Elijah. Peter stammers out a strange offer to make tents there at the top of the mountain, one each for Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. Although strangely, Peter doesn't mention making any for himself, James, or John. No sooner has Peter spoken than a voice comes from heaven, much like the voice Jesus heard as he was coming out of the waters of baptism. "This is my son, the chosen. Listen to him." As suddenly as the vision came, it is over. They are once again alone with Jesus, walking down the mountain. Jesus has shown them who he is. Jesus has shown us who he is. I sometimes struggle to connect with the story of the Transfiguration. It's a story of a literal and metaphorical mountaintop moment. A moment of glory and transcendence, radiance and breathtaking joy. About the moments of beauty and insight that God graces us with, moments that can sustain us, carrying us through the long, difficult slog of daily life. Often life feels more like an arduous trudge through the valley, sprinkled with relatively few, desperately few of those mountaintop moments. Certainly, 2025 feels more like a trudge through the valley. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But maybe that's part of the point of the story of Jesus' transfiguration. It is the fleeting nature of this revelation, this moment of seeing the glory of Christ. It reflects the contrast between those transfiguration moments and our daily lives. We don't spend most of our time on the mountaintop face to face with the glory of God. We spend most of our time immersed in the daily routine, going to work and buying the groceries and taking the train and walking the dog, attending to the mundane matters of everyday living. But from time to time, we get a glimpse beyond, a glimpse of who God really is, of what life is, that takes our breath away. The invitation for us is to hold on to that vision, treasure it as a gift, ponder it in our hearts, let it sustain us through times of pain and struggle or times of monotony and routine. Moments come from time to time when we do feel that transfiguration glory, that mountaintop moment. For some of us, perhaps the birth of a child or a grandchild would be such a moment. For some of us, maybe it is when we hear a really beautiful piece of music, or sing or play it, or make art. Maybe for some of us, those mountaintop moments come on literal mountaintops in the beauty of nature. For some of us, maybe there was a moment in your work or your volunteering where you saw what you were doing it for and understood that it really mattered, that you were making a difference. Maybe there are mountaintop moments in church, I hope so, when new members join, or when we baptize a baby or an adult, holding a candle on Christmas Eve in the dim sanctuary, singing Silent Night, Holy Night. All is calm, all is bright. When a piece of music or a Bible verse or the taste of communion strikes a chord in your heart and you know that God is present. In the Transfiguration, we catch a glimpse of who Jesus really is, how things really are. God's own Son has taken on flesh and dwelt among us. We see Jesus in all his glory, and in it the promise of the resurrection. He's not just some charismatic, wandering preacher who will give some inspiring speeches and say some wise words and then be executed, a spark extinguished by empire. He is God incarnate, and so all that lies ahead will not ultimately be able to overcome him. The powers that be will show us who they really are, and we would be well warned to believe them. And Jesus will show us who he really is, and we should believe that too. The disciples see him dazzling and radiant, hear him declared God's beloved Son, and in that vision there is promise that all the suffering and pain and death that lies ahead will be swallowed up in victory, vanquished by a God of grace and glory. That love can and will triumph over hate. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Christ shows us who he is. Awe-inducing and glorious, and at the very same time, the same warm and loving Jesus who has been a friend and companion to the disciples along the way. This is the one we worship, the one we follow, a God who is mysterious and powerful, and who walks beside us as friend and teacher. So no matter what lies ahead of us, in the coming Lenten season, in our days wherever they take us, in the challenges that face our congregation and our wider church, in the midst of 2025 and all that it has brought and will bring, may we trust in that God who dazzles and shines, who comforts and loves, who calls us up to the mountaintop for a fleeting glimpse of holy light. And may we trust in the God who sends us down the mountain again to do the hard work of being God's people in this world. Amen.